The law firm's annual summer intern reception was in full swing. Young, eager faces mingled throughout the conference room, clutching glasses of cheap wine and hoping to make connections that would launch their careers. I stood near the refreshment table, waiting for my husband Mark to finish his conversation with the managing partners. "Having fun at your husband's little work party?" I turned to see Brenda Walsh, Mark's secretary, approaching with her usual condescending smile. She'd been with the firm for 15 years and treated it like her personal kingdom. "It's lovely," I replied politely. "The interns seem bright." "Oh, they are. Very ambitious. Very focused on building real careers." Her emphasis on real was subtle but pointed. 3 summer interns approached our corner, drawn by Brenda's confident demeanor. She immediately shifted into mentor mode. "Ladies, let me introduce you to Mrs. Harrison. She's married to one of our senior associates." The interns smiled politely. Sarah, a Harvard law student, extended her hand. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Harrison. Do you work in law as well?" Before I could answer, Brenda laughed. "Oh no, dear. Not everyone is cut out for the professional world." The interns exchanged glances, unsure how to respond to the awkward comment. "What Brenda means," I said gently, "is that I work in a different field entirely." "She dabbles in various things," Brenda continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Keeps busy while her husband does the real work." Jessica, another intern, tried to be polite. "That's nice. What kind of things interest you?" "Business ventures, mostly," I replied. Brenda practically snorted. "She's not CEO material," she whispered loudly to the interns, as if I couldn't hear her. They all nodded knowingly, eager to agree with someone they saw as an established professional. "Maybe secretary to a secretary someday," Brenda added with a cruel smile. The interns giggled nervously. I could see them mentally filing me away as unimportant spouse, and preparing to focus their networking energy elsewhere. I walked over with my brightest smile and opened my purse. "You're absolutely right about materials, Brenda." She looked pleased that I was apparently agreeing with her assessment. "I do work with quite a lot of business materials," I continued, pulling out my business card holder. "Cards, specifically." I handed one to each in turn, watching their faces carefully. Sarah read hers first, and her expression shifted from polite dismissal to shock. "Meridian Capital. CEO and founder," she read aloud. Jessica looked at her card with widening eyes. "Phoenix Technologies. Chief Executive Officer." The third intern, Amy, stared at hers in confusion. "Stellar Consulting Group. This says you're the CEO here too." Brenda frowned, leaning over to look at the cards. "That's impossible. There must be some mistake." I pulled out more cards, handing them to the growing crowd of interns who had noticed the commotion. "Apex Innovation, CEO. Triumph Holdings, Chief Executive Officer. Sterling Solutions, Founder and CEO. 12 companies." Sarah whispered, fanning out the business cards like playing cards. 14, actually, I corrected gently, pulling out the last 2 cards. "I keep some in my car." Brenda's face had gone completely white. "This is some kind of joke. You can't be the CEO of 14 companies." 12, I corrected again. 2 are subsidiaries. Though I suppose the distinction doesn't matter much. Amy was frantically typing on her phone. "Meridian Capital, oh my god. You're listed as founder on the Forbes website. It says here your net worth is." "Amy," I said quickly, "let's not discuss numbers at a social event." But it was too late. The intern's eyes were practically bulging. "Holy shit. Sorry, I mean, wow." Word spread through the reception like wildfire. Soon, nearly every intern and junior associate had crowded around our corner of the room. Mark appeared at my elbow, looking confused by the sudden attention. "What's going on here?" he asked. "Your wife just handed out business cards," Sarah explained breathlessly. "She's the CEO of 12 different companies." Mark smiled proudly. 14, actually. Though she's being modest about the subsidiaries. Brenda was still staring at the business cards in shock. But you never said anything. You always just introduced yourself as Mark's wife." "Because that's how you introduced me," I pointed out gently. "You never asked what I did for work." I assumed. Brenda stammered. You assumed that because I'm married to an associate rather than a partner, I must not have my own career, I finished kindly. It's a common misconception. Jessica was reading something on her phone. Phoenix Technologies just announced a $50 million acquisition last month. That was you. My team handles the day-to-day operations, I said. I mostly focus on strategic planning and new ventures. New ventures? Amy asked eagerly. I'm always looking for promising companies to acquire or invest in. Speaking of which, I turned to the interns with renewed interest. What practice areas are you hoping to specialize in? The next 20 minutes flew by as I discussed business law, corporate acquisitions, and startup challenges with the increasingly excited interns. They asked thoughtful questions about entrepreneurship, scaling companies, and managing multiple ventures simultaneously. Brenda stood on the sidelines, looking increasingly uncomfortable as she realized how badly she'd misjudged the situation. Mrs. Harrison, Sarah said as our conversation began to wind down, would it be possible to schedule an informational interview? I'm very interested in corporate law, and learning about your companies would be incredibly valuable. I'd be happy to arrange that, I replied, pulling out my phone. Actually, Meridian Capital is expanding our legal department. We're looking for bright law students for internship positions. The interns practically vibrated with excitement. Paid internships? Jessica asked hopefully. Of course. We believe in compensating people fairly for their work. Amy raised her hand tentatively. Would you consider someone who's only a first-year student? Talent and work ethic matter more than year in school, I assured her. As the interns dispersed to continue networking, several stopped to thank me and ask for my direct email address. The energy in the room had completely shifted. Suddenly, I was one of the most sought-after contacts at the reception. Brenda approached me as the crowd thinned out, looking thoroughly chastened. Mrs. Harrison, I owe you an enormous apology, she began. Call me Diana, please. Diana. I was completely inappropriate earlier. I made assumptions that were unfounded and frankly rude. Apology accepted, Brenda. We all make assumptions sometimes. Can I ask, why didn't you ever mention your companies when you visited the office? I considered the question carefully. Honestly, because I wanted to be treated as Mark's wife first. When people know about my businesses, they sometimes forget that I'm here to support him, not to network for myself. Mark squeezed my hand. Though I have to admit, it's pretty satisfying watching people realize how accomplished you are. Brenda looked genuinely curious now. How do you manage 14 companies? That must be incredibly demanding. Good teams and clear systems, I explained. I spend most of my time on strategic decisions and let competent people handle operations. It's not as overwhelming as it sounds. And you started all of these from scratch. Some I founded, others I acquired and improved. Each company serves a different market, but they often complement each other synergistically. As the reception wound down, several senior partners approached to introduce themselves properly. Word had spread through the firm about my companies, and suddenly everyone was interested in getting to know Mark's wife better. Diana, one of the managing partners said, I had no idea we had such a successful entrepreneur in our midst. If any of your companies need legal services. Actually, I said thoughtfully, Meridian Capital is about to close a major acquisition. We'll need a law firm with strong corporate experience. His eyes lit up immediately. I'd love to discuss how we might assist with that. During the drive home, Mark was unusually quiet. Everything okay? I asked. I keep thinking about what Brenda said. About you not being CEO material. He glanced at me with a mix of pride and embarrassment. I should have corrected her immediately. You didn't know she was saying those things. But I've heard similar comments before and I didn't always speak up. I guess I got used to people underestimating you. Why do you think that bothered you tonight? Mark was quiet for a moment. Because watching those interns' faces when they realized who you really are, it reminded me how lucky I am. And how unfair it is that you have to prove yourself over and over again. Everyone has to prove themselves in business, I said gently. Not like this. Not because people assume you're just someone's wife with no identity of your own. I reached over and squeezed his hand. Mark, I chose to be your wife. I'm proud to be your wife. My companies don't define me any more than yours define you. I know. But still, 14 companies, Diana. 14. And Brenda thought you might someday be qualified to be someone's secretary. We both started laughing at the absurdity of it. You know what the funniest part is? I said. 3 of my companies are actually looking for executive assistants. Really well-paid positions with excellent benefits. Are you going to offer Brenda an interview? I grinned. Maybe. But she'd have to get past my current CO first. The next week, 6 interns from the reception applied for positions with my companies. 3 got offers. And Brenda sent me a formal letter of recommendation for Mark's next promotion review, the most glowing performance assessment he'd ever received. Sometimes the best way to handle assumptions about your capabilities is simply to hand out business cards.